What's good, everybody? We are here at Compulsion Games. I'm here in Montreal, and I get the chance to hang out with
Jasmin Roy, Game Director on Saturday Midnight.
Excited to have you here and hanging out with me because we just got a chance to check out the demo of the game, and we got a chance to see a really fantastic part of the documentary that's coming out very soon. First of all, the game looks fantastic. I think the team is really kicking ass and doing really fantastic work. One of the things that I got really excited about initially seeing the game was not only this balance of this really beautiful art style, but this really cool combat that is coming into this space. Please give me a kind of rundown and overview of the game for the folks at home who might not necessarily know.
Sure. So, Sound of Midnight is we describe it as a third-person narrative-driven action-adventure game where you play as Hazel Flood, and Hazel is in a search for a mother who disappeared during a hurricane, and it's usually a mix of, she gets these weaving powers that allows her it grants her magical spells that really confers her abilities to do traversal, manipulating the environment to kind of progress, as well as combat, as you've seen. She's equipped with, all of her equipment is inspired by the traditional art of weaving. So she's got some of her tools include hooks to weave strands. She's got a distaff on her back and spindles that she can use to kind of manipulate these magical strands. So all the powers are inspired by this, where she's able to kind of tap into the tapestry that unifies reality.
I loved the way that kind of came across from a not only artistic perspective. There was some commentary around lace being a part of that conversation, and some of those elements being connected there. But getting a chance to now see the game in motion, because I remember the first time I got a chance to see it was on the initial trailer that we saw in the Xbox showcase, and then getting a chance to see a little bit more of it later. And it was this balance of we have this really interesting stop motion animation style here with traditional combat and animation here, but there's a lot of different systems that are working within this game that really pull all this together. You talked a little bit about combat, which I think is really important. I want to dig a little bit deeper into that. The enemies are there for multiple reasons. And they have various different kinds of places in the world in which they kind of inhabit, right?
Yes.
Talk to me a little bit about, not only the kind of arena combat focused layer there, but how you're thinking about these different kinds of enemies and entities that wind up being in the world.
Yeah, for sure. So as you progress through the world, you're going to see this kind of these supernatural elements in the environment that we call stigma. And stigma reflects the what happens when something terrible happens to a person or a creature. It kind of takes all the same strands that Hazel is manipulating. It corrupts them a little bit, and they all that negative energy kind of forms the stigma around there. And as Hazel enters these areas, she's going to come into contact with evil spirits that we call aints. And they inhabit kind of haunt these places. And they appear, and this is usually when the combat's going to happen, where you're going to need to defeat them in order to be able to progress. So Hazel, as a weaver, is able to unravel this stigma, unravel these corrupted strands to mend the world back together, and she can do the same on the aints. All of this is based on the aints and some of these elements based on Southern folklore that we inspired ourselves to kind of create this fantasy around it. And this is pretty much a rundown of it. And as you explore, you're going to be you're going to be kind of mending all these areas. Another thing that I could mention on it is that stigma is also directly tied to what we call the mythical creatures. These are giant creatures that are tied to a specific region. The creatures themselves have been afflicted by a deep personal story. They used to be necessarily they used to be maybe a normal creature, and then they transform due to the events that kind of affected them, right? And as you progress through the region, you're going to slowly unravel all the stigma, which is going to reveal to Hazel some visions of the past. And the more you collect, the more you're going to be able to understand how to heal the creature itself, to kind of just to help them. Just to
Yeah.
help them heal the process. All of the stories of the creatures are tied to themes of loss and trauma.
Yeah.
We wanted to touch on these kind of like Southern Gothic stories, of like the past coming back to kind of affect the present.
Yeah.
And the creatures themselves are sometimes people, sometimes animals. Like they vary. They vary all, and we can't wait for you guys to kind of discover all of them. These kind of
Yeah, maybe we got a chance to see one in particular. You want to talk a little bit about that we got a chance to see in the demo?
So in the demo right now is Two-Toed Tom that we've shown at the showcase earlier in the year, and Two-Toed Tom's the giant albino alligator. I can't reveal too much about what happened to him,
sure.
but he used to be a very small alligator, and he's slowly
put on some weight.
Slowly he's grown. And as you explore his story, you're also going to see how it's tied to the other characters that you encounter in the region, the other inhabitants that might still be there after the hurricane hit, and they're still there. So you're gonna meet them, and it all ties to Two-Toed Tom, central theme.
I mean, I love the fact that we got a chance to see another kind of gameplay element, which weaves directly through not only the combat but through the music of the game, which is really important to not only building the world but really kind of giving you this extra layer of excitement that goes through these boss battles with their own very specific themes, which is a thing that we got a chance to see today.
So what's important to understand about mythical creatures that they're not just boss fights.
Yeah.
Okay, we got a ton of different mythical creature, but they all have a musical theme. And each mythical creature that crosses Hazel's journey is going to have the same type of personal story that is also reflected in the lyrics of the songs. So the various songs are all usually all very orchestrated, and we took a specific care to tie them up to gameplay actions. We wanted to build these sequences that were interactive with the gameplay, where as you progress through an encounter, whether it's a boss fight per se or a traversal encounter or something more narrative driven, that the music would slowly build up with all of these encounters kind of adding layers as players progress. So we wanted to make sure we add this musicality in gameplay. There's some other aspect of musicality that you'll see, like when you use spells, there's some notes that plays. There's a lot of that we wanted to build dynamically within the systems of the game.
Yeah, and it sounds like from the conversations I've had with the folks here at the studio, there's a really cool connection in between the specific teams and how you're all working together to not only influence some of the combat, but also the exploration of the world that I think came across really, really nicely. Like, most of these games are kind of, built around these sandboxes, and then you have these other moments where you can kind of go into smaller areas and get more lore and more pieces of it. Talk to me a little bit about what it's like to kind of continue to help build that with the other parts of the team.
So one of the best things about this game is really the team, and everybody on the team really participated. We're an active participant in all of this. So when we looked at exploration for the world, we were really looking into how can we enrich each section. How can we enrich all of that? So the narrative team went on, provided all tons of readables to find all tons of embedded narrative that the art team built on the level design team. They went on and they added all these nooks and crannies, all these alternate paths that you can find so that you could, collect currencies, upgrade Hazel, and we really wanted the exploration to feel rewarding for players. Yeah. So there is, it does lead into upgrading Hazel overall, but also finding collectibles, finding embedded narrative, world narrative, and being able to discover a little bit more about the world of Midnight and the universe that we're building.
Yeah, and it feels like, connected to that conversation too, around like the upgrade of Hazel and kind of learning more about how she's going to kind of get more powerful in this world. It feels like that's also tied to her being a character who is finding herself, right?
Yes.
Learning more about, she's not a superhero. She's a teenager in this space who's learning what it's like to be in this world that she is also finding more about her own self and the powers that she has. What has it been like to kind of build these systems for this game in terms of, how are you thinking about combat? How are you thinking about traversal? How are you thinking about, making sure that the player is really routed to the spaces that you want to see those really beautiful corners, right? How do you kind of guide the player in those ways?
Yeah. So that all went rather organically with the team. We wanted to create a narrative-driven experience, and at the onset, we wanted it to be a modern folktale. And we wanted it to have like a ton of magical realism. Yeah. And that informed like 3 ways we decided to build a game. First one was the world. We knew it was going to be set in the American South. We knew it was going to be a bit of a cranked up version of it and, inspired by it. But that really informed the type of environment we would explore, because we knew that it would be like, multiple biomes and, multiple regions, and how can we create game systems that are going to apply both for like flat ground to a very vertical areas. As we know, the South is quite diversified in its type of environment you can see, and so that informed the traversal, and that also informed a little bit of the powers we wanted to have. So the first bit was really building the world. The second one was the weaving powers. We wanted a way for players to be able to interact with the fantasy element of the setting, right? We wanted players to be like, it's a modern folktale. It's magical realism. So how can we have Azo kind of like interact with it, right? Yeah. So that's where the spindles came in and the different spells. And then the last but not least was the mythical creature. Wanted them to be centerpiece. So we wanted them to be, and we had to deal with like their different sizes because they're not all the same size. So, and wanted them to have like, their own exotic sequence. So those were really the 3 main elements we focused on the design side to really nail, a unique journey. So it was all a journey. So how do we guide players through the environment to more precisely answer your question?
Yes.
We use a couple of different techniques with our camera, but also mostly our composition. Our composition was really done to make sure that we can orient players as we move along so that they would get the best shot, they would get the best thing, they would get the best reveal. That's the thing, we had so many reveals, that's where we added some of that exploration in, so that you'd go and see vistas from different angles and be able like to discover little things that we were like, that's not going to be for the main path, that's going to be on the side. So that was really how we went along, creating all of that composition first, all of these narrative beats first, and then adding on the side the other elements that we could see, and then people started building and layering and building and layering. So we did a couple of revisions here and there to kind of optimize things, but that's really how the whole game was built. It's very important to for us that the journey it led into a mechanic, that led into a cinematic, that led into a vista, and that rhythm that would go along with the experience was to us very important. So big team effort, really.
No, that's great. I love that, because it's one of those conversations around like, again, how do you guide the player, but also give them space to kind of find those paths and find the other layers of gameplay that you really want to dig into. One of the things I love asking CDs on their projects is, I know everyone has a baby a little bit. And, everyone is like, this thing that we really got a chance to, that was really hard, that we really knocked out of the park, we got a chance to figure that out and really make it happen. Do you have a memory, or, again, the game is still being worked on, but it's, do you have that, a moment where you're like, oh man, this thing that we really were pushing for, we nailed it, and we're really working on that thing? Is it I'll leave it in systems.
But there's a couple. I'd say.
So we don't spoil anything.
No, but I'd say the music, the layering of the music. It was that was one of those that I was like, I think it's gonna work. Let's see how it works. But like getting the music recorded, sent back, going through all these phases, and when it came in, we were like, that's cool. We were like, that's cool. That works. So that was probably the biggest one, I'd say, because it does interact with all of our systems. And the player decides to not follow along. What happens? How it's all layered. So that one, and the other thing, some of the magical transitions that you saw, going back to the vision of the past, the seamless transition. That was another one that we were like,
I mean, and that hits really, really well for the ability for Hazel to really, help those entities kind of figure out their trauma, right? Which I really want to dig into that really quick. I think, it's difficult to build a gameplay system around a feeling, right?
Yeah.
And empathy is a big part of this game. Yeah. And connecting with other beings and other entities in a way that feels, very akin to her as a character, but also, to be fair, the world needs a little bit more empathy, right?
Yeah, for sure.
How is it to kind of like build systems that kind of showcase that emotional relationship?
Well, that was really fun for us to do because we had so many people involved in doing it, right? Because we had the system part, but then we also had like the scene itself. How is it gonna come in? How does the player goes in? How does the camera move? And then how do you get back out of it? So system-wise, it was super interesting. Rather complex in terms of grabbing everybody together to kind of build it. But yeah, for us, it was really like the central theme that we kept coming back to try to build each component of what you've seen so that it would focus on these key moments, right? Because it is built within these key moments that you will learn about the creature's story and keep on going. So yeah, it needed a lot of effort from a lot of people.
Yeah, I can be sure that there's a lot of conversations that happen in those huddles where you're like, all right, we have this thing that we're trying to work on. How do we actually like bring that to fruition?
Yeah, for sure.
That's really, really cool. Last question for you.
Yes.
Because I think, as a big fan of many of the games that the team has made, and now not getting a chance to see this game that I've been really excited for, live and in person, what is your favorite part of getting to make games?
My favorite part of getting to make games, I'd say it's really working with the team. Yeah. Like it really is always a team effort. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Like I'm here alone with you, but it is deep down a team effort. So each day we come into the office, we discuss, we place a brick. And then the next day we place another brick and another brick. And at one point it's a house. Yeah. And then you get to show the house. And then you get to see people's reaction. But at its core, it really is always working with the team and having fun with them. Like I'm responsible for, consistency, making sure everything fits together. But for this game especially, everybody really poured everything they had into it. Yeah. Like there's a ton of people that put everything they had and they all made it their own. So anyway, that was super cool to watch. Yeah. That was super fun. Well, Jasmin, that's my favorite.
No, I mean, it's coming through. Like, I think, no one knew that I was coming up here. Our fans didn't know that I was coming up here. And when I got a chance to share that out earlier today, the flood of, oh my God, that's so crazy that you're getting a chance to see this. Oh my goodness, that is so cool that you get a chance to go check that out early. I really am dying to play this game. A lot of that sentiment came through. And it reflected a lot of my own personal want of being like, I am hyped for this thing and really excited for what this game is going to be. Not only culturally, but it is a solid game from what I got a chance to check out with the demo you shared. So, bravo to the team. The team is really putting their, as they say in my circles, they putting their foot in it. And it's great to see the continued efforts from Compulsion and from the team on this game, and I think everybody's going to have a real good time with it.
Yeah, we hope. We really can't wait for you guys to try the game out for yourself.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for spending some time with me. Here at the studio. We're going to have definitely some more conversations about South of Midnight and some more goodies from while we're here at Compulsion. Stick around, hang out, and we'll be back after this.